Debt Free TV, in association with getoutofdebtfree.org.
Alright, I'll start with the Ashaninka people. The Ashaninka tribe in the Upper Amazon in Peru. They live in rainforests, but it's in the mountains. It's not flat as it is further down into Brazil and in lower parts of Ecuador and stuff. I've been going there for 30 years, so it's a long-term relationship that I have with the Ashaninka people. And I travelled the world a lot before I managed to get into the Amazon jungle, but once I got there, it's really the only place in the world I ever go back to, so I don't really go on holidays or travelling particularly anymore, because I found people that I really, really like to be with and who I felt I could learn lots and lots from. They actually live, I don't know, anyone here been to Peru? I expect lots of you have. Anyone been to Peru? No? Yeah? No? Nobody? Oh, okay. Alright, they're in the Upper Amazon. It's the main tributary of the Amazon. I don't know, well, you know your geography, but the longest tributary of the Amazon is in Peru. And it's usually labelled the Urubamba River, but it has, the Apurimac River. Am I too close? Oh, right. Stop the booming. Sorry, I'm not used to these things. Thank you very much. Okay, yeah, they're on the Apurimac River, which is actually the longest tributary of the Amazon, and they're in a section called the River Ene. I didn't actually go into the jungle because I was interested in ayahuasca. I couldn't quite get my head around the psychedelics partying scene back in the 70s, and then I read about these people, various tribes actually in the Amazon, who consume this brew. And the brew that they consume, I imagine quite a few of you know what it is, but it's called ayahuasca, which is vine of the soul, I think. Sometimes it's called vine of death, but actually the brew is two plants. It's the vine, Banisteriopsis carpi, and that's brewed up with the leaves of the Psychotria viridis, sort of shrub. And the green leaves contain DMT, and the vine itself contains various harmalines, which allow your body to absorb the DMT orally, which normally it doesn't. Yeah, my first experience going to visit the Ashaninka, I'll try and talk about ayahuasca, Shamanism, the Ashaninka really. I won't get too much onto the Amazon. The first time I went into the jungle, I was there 16 days, 15 nights, and we drank on 14, which was a bit of an introduction. And it was quite incredible, of course, because it was in the middle of the jungle, it was surrounded by trees, just lying on the ground in the open under the stars. And the beautiful thing I found was that when the brew started to take effect, they would all start singing, chanting, kind of in harmony, but they don't all sing together. It's one starts, usually the guy who's dished the brew out. I could say the shaman, but in a funny way, they're all shaman because there's very little distinction there. There are, I suppose, the most significant shaman there are the tobacco shaman. In the area where I go, they were all killed except one during the war with the Shining Path. Many of you are aware of the Shining Path, Senderos Luminosos. They were a kind of idealistic, Marxist, Maoist, revolutionary organization. And I used to think that, well, you know, they opposed imperialism and they opposed America, and their theory seemed to be all right until I actually came into contact with them a bit closer. And things developed such that just after I left Peru, after working there for 5 years, the Ashaninka lands were attacked by Senderos Luminosos. So they actually fought a war for something like 12, 14 years against a very heavily armed Senderos. They were heavily armed because they could get their armaments through the connections to the coca trade, because there's so much coca being grown also in the jungle, that they were able to make deals. So the Senderos said, you can carry on trading, but you bring us in guns from Colombia, etc., etc. Anyway, they fought a war for about 15 years, lost many people, many maimed, injured, many lost. It would decimate many peoples, I think. There's estimates of between 5,000 and 15,000 people killed during that, just of the Ashaninka. So they have experienced war. Previous to that, contact with the West had been like colonists, one who came in to clear jungle because they were encouraged to by the government, because they didn't want them all migrating to Lima from the mountains. Those people came in growing fruits, difficult if, 1,000 different settlers trying to sell the same fruit, so they ended up growing coca, which was more remunerative, easier to grow. And that's not the Indians, these are the colonists who come from the mountains, and some of them have come from Lima as well. All right, that's kind of where they are, who they are. They've had contact in the past with rubber tappers as well, but that was a long time ago. Missionaries came in probably during the 1920s, and then gradually extended into more remote areas during the 60s and 70s. I, like probably many people here, had read about missionary work in the jungle, and I was very skeptical of them, but the actual guy where I went kept people out. He was a Franciscan missionary, and he was very protective of the Indians, and I know lots would probably like to give that impression, but he genuinely did have their interests in heart. Because of that, they've still got a lot of their environment intact there, because he set up a precedent really for keeping out people who wanted to get on their land, so he was quite important for that. Other communities further downriver, though they've been getting lots and lots of money, people like the Rainforest Foundation, they're busy going off and spending on chainsaws, and I think the guy walks around his community with a machine gun. It's a bit strange, and that's the one that the Rainforest Foundation supports. So charitable aid is a funny thing, because people give it, salves their conscience, goes to charity, think it's going to a good cause, and I think the charities themselves probably start off to do that, but they seem to end up just being businesses, and as long as it looks right, it's okay. So though a friend of mine's challenged the Rainforest Association about this, or Rainforest Foundation, sorry, they don't really want to know. So it's very difficult. I fortunately go to this other set of communities where they did not go over to Sendero. People down there switched sides to Senderos, which is another factor. The Rainforest Foundation supporting communities whose leader betrayed his people. So that's quite strange as well. All right, yeah. Why do I like the Ashaninka people? They have a kind of philosophy called, I think it's called a kametsa seiki, but it's basically a good life. Can't be bad. And it's built around sharing food. So people always have in the past shared food together. This is beginning to change where there's long-term contact with the colonists. And the other thing is emotional restraint. So they tend not to display anger or outrageous happiness particularly, unless they go drinking Masato. They seem to chill out a bit when they drink Masato. Masato is the cassava beer that they make, and it's really a staple part of the diet. Kind of looks like strawberry yogurt when it's first brewed. After a couple of days, it begins to get a bit pokier, and if you're drinking it after it's been around 3 days, then everyone gets pretty merry. They seem to use it actually because they're so restrained emotionally. It's the only time that they really let go and start dancing around and laughing and joking and so on, which is great because I'm quite a reserved person as well, so it kind of fits for me to be with them. But it also means they ply me with lots of Masato if they get a chance. The other nice thing about Masato, and I think we could really learn from this, is I don't know if I offend any of the females here, but the women make the beer, basically, which I think is great. You know, the men clear the places that they're going to grow there, because they're not hunter-gatherers. They're mixed. They hunt, they gather, but they also cultivate cassava and a few other things. So the men clear the patches in the jungle and plant the cassava. The women harvest it and they make it into the beer. Again, I expect most of you have heard about it, but they boil up the cassava, sweet cassava, not the bitter cassava that you have to squeeze the cyanide stuff out. They boil up the cassava with sweet potato, and then the women will sit round, maybe 6, 7 or 8 women sit round a big pot. Even though it's only one woman's pot, they'll all help out and chew the lumps and then spit it all back in. So when you're drinking them Masato, you're sort of sharing a bit of their DNA, yeah, which is great. Back in, I think, 83, I had a 3-month-old daughter, and we took her in, and we were away down the river swimming, and we left her in the village because she was fast asleep. And yeah, it's not like sort of going down the pub here. Yeah, she was left in the village, but she woke up. No problem, they just nursed her, fed her, which again is great, so she's got a bit of DNA as well. Yeah, so the women make the Masato. It's very important for their social cohesion. It's very important for their energy for getting about in the jungle. It's extremely difficult environment for getting about in because it's quite incise, the countryside. So there are gorges 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet deep. There's waterfalls, 1,000-foot free fall and stuff like that, with no footpaths to them. So it's amazing. You know, it's what you want when you go to a waterfall, is to actually cut a bit of scrub away to get there and find your path, rather than trekking along sort of a tarmac, wires at the side and lots of stuff. How long that'll last, I don't know. There are moves there, I think, to try and open it to tourism, but we're trying to resist it. And as long as there's no road there, I don't think that's going to happen, because tourism would just change it so drastically. Yeah, but, a few years ago, I was thinking in terms of collecting money for the Ashaninka to help them. Not that they need help, really. They only need help because of our society impinging on them. And there were things that they needed, things like shortwave radio transceivers and solar panels, so that they could keep contact between communities in case there were bands of senderos who came in, because they are still there despite what the Peruvian government claims. They're small bands, they don't really have a proper leader anymore, but they're still existent, and they sometimes see bands across the other side of the river, and so they like to be able to keep in touch. Most of the communities do now have radios, so the shortwave radio. So that's good, because I can get to the nearest town, which is about 200 odd miles away, and radio in, so they know that I'm going to be coming. They do actually have one satellite phone there as well now, which is quite strange. I can actually, if I want to, phone the village from home, which seems peculiar. But usually that's on a Sunday morning, because you know somebody, there's a meeting there, you know somebody's going to be there. Okay. When I first went, they weren't greatly acculturated, but they had begun growing cash crops. Cacao and coffee are the two main cash crops that they grow. I've also seen them growing peanuts, sesame, uña de gato, if any of you know that stuff, cat's claw, not the European one, but the jungle one. It's used a lot in Germany as a cure or a preventative for cancer, I think. I've actually just got a prophylactic. I'm off to Peru in 10 days actually. I've just got a prophylactic for malaria, a homeopathic one, and that contains Unistigata as well.
Sorry, did you say prophylactic?
Yeah, not a condom.
That means
A prophylactic is something that you take to prevent getting malaria. It's a preventative. So in the case of sex, condom prevents insemination.
Prophylactic is just a word to describe something that prevents.
Yeah. Is that right? Yep. If you go into a chemist in Peru thinking I'll try and get something for malaria and say you want a prophylactic, they'll come out with a thing condom. So yeah, it's a funny word really. So this will probably wander a bit. I don't tend to have anything written down. I'm sorry I don't have any pictures. I did have a slideshow on the computer, but we didn't have an attachment to put it in, connect it to the projector here. Sorry?
It's more tribal without the slideshow.
Yeah, I guess it is more tribal without the slideshow. Yeah, although they are getting some electricity in there with solar panels. And I don't like a lot of the things that are happening there. It's not for me to say what they should or shouldn't do, but they're very vulnerable and they're not aware of the long-term impact of some of the things that are coming in.
Do you speak the language?
A tiny bit, because first I have to go through Spanish, and then it's Ashaninka. I'm hoping to be in there for about 4.5 months now, so I'm planning to really get my head around the language. I've never actually stayed in there before 3 years ago for more than 2 weeks. Not because I can't stand it or anything like that, I absolutely love being there, but because that was usually the amount of time of food I could take in, because I didn't like to be dependent on their food, because you're just adding population to limited resources really, because they do get all of their food from their environment, so fish, some hunting, meat, some sort of nuts, berries, all sorts of little bits and pieces, but the staple is cassava, masato, and probably fish, and meat's a bonus. So if somebody comes back with a deer or a pig, it's great. Or a big rat. I mean, last time I was there, I was really, really hungry, and they got one of these huge rats about this high, and they're really tasty. I took somebody in and I said, "Oh, great, we've got some really nice." Sorry, vegetarians. We've got some really great meat, but she said, "It looks like a rat." I said, "Well, it is a kind of rat." It's a bit like an agouti, but a bit smaller. She said, "I'm not going to eat rat." I said, "Well, it's a rodent, probably rabbit or something." She said, "I can't eat that." It's quite good if you go in, if you can eat what they have there. And the first time I went in, I suffered. I know we're taking brews every night, but I suffered quite a lot from not being able to drink much masato or eat much cassava. And the second time I went in, I vowed I would just do whatever they did, and I was much healthier, much stronger, enjoyed it much more. I think it was that thing of getting out of your head what you were used to, and you'd like something sweet. There's not really much sweet there, etc., etc. But if you can get your head around that, you can start to adapt to something that's quite different. Other things about them that I really, really liked was the way that they dealt with their children. I never saw them hit a child. They'll sometimes tell them off in this wonderful sort of tonal intonation. And you can hear them tell them off, but it's all right. But they're always around their children. If not the mother, then the father. So even though they have strongly demarcated gender roles, male, female, the men will spend time with their kids from the age, well, probably once they're off the breast, really, so from the age of about 9 months to a year. They wean them quite relatively early, I suppose. And they even wean them onto ayahuasca from about 3 months. Yeah. Sorry, I don't give them a big bowl full, they just take a little bit in their mouth and just give it to them. I think it's like homeopathic introduction, really. I've talked to people here about that. It's shock horror, but it's like that's their culture. They grow up with it. It's an intimate part of their experience, cosmology, medicine, the whole lot. So it's quite understandable that they do that. I do think now with contact that's declining slightly, and the practice of taking it, which I don't think is a good thing. I think as long as they're drinking the brew, they'll retain their religious, spiritual belief systems. If they stop, then I think it will fall apart, because they are a very proud people. Closer to the towns, they are already fallen, if you like. They're in that funny space between a proud culture and the ruins of proud culture. So if you look at North American Indians, I know we get the sweet, nice little bits over, but if anybody goes to North America and try to visit them, it isn't necessarily very nice or very pleasant. The poorest people in North America, or the Aborigines in Australia, who I have been with, and I found them beautiful, beautiful people, but I'm impressed they get from white Australia. It's just appalling, despite, again, the sort of pretense at incorporating them into their culture. Other things, because they're with their kids all the time, they're by fires. Kids, as soon as they can hold a machete, they're sort of trying to cut through fish or bits off to cut coconuts. They've got a job to hold the thing, to lift them up. But the parent will be there, just guiding them. And we live in such a strange society here where I don't imagine most of you would be like that, but out there, if a kid has a knife, it's, oh God, that's a weapon, it's dangerous, he might cut himself. My kids had knives around from, a year old, really. They were using ordinary scissors. We had a wood burner at one end, a ray burner at the other, who didn't bother with a guard. And some people think, well, that's stupid, that's irresponsible. They never burnt themselves, they never cut themselves, because you show them how sharp it is, you show them how hot it is. And that was a really nice thing about bringing up my kids over here. We live remote in the hills and Welsh borders, so it was appropriate for them. It would be much harder in the city to live in that sort of way, I suppose. Sharing food, of course, it's another thing to learn from, and I know a lot of people at festivals experiment with that, which is fantastic. It's community, it's living together, it's breaking away from our kind of, we have this confusion of sort of selfishness and independence in our society, and it's I won't kind of try and explain it a lot, but we're geared to serve ourselves, I think. But at the same time, with this whole thing of independence and everything, you look around, and many, many people have not grown up, especially I think men more than women. Because we have no, I'm not meaning that as a gender prejudice. I think women have natural cycles in their lives with the onset of menstruation, childbirth, that are major rites of initiation. Men don't have that here. And lots, choose to go down the pub and get completely pissed and drive into a lamppost, or they take loads of ketamine or something. But it's not really an initiation, is it? It's not helping you to grow up. So I think that's something we could explore here in this country, is how do we bring our boys up so that they have the confidence and strength to be themselves.
Do they have an initiation ritual in this Ayahuasca tribe that you visited for boys?
They're very secretive about some of that stuff, and I haven't stayed there long enough to actually inquire about that. So it's a really good question, and I would like to find out. I suspect the ayahuasca brew itself can be a part of the initiation, because they do make it extremely strong sometimes. So yeah, all of that was fantastic. I used to go hunting and fishing with them, but I find that a lot harder now. Because you do need to be pretty fit there. What else was I going to say on that? The women make these beautiful baby carriers, which they're woven. They grow cotton. They have grown cotton for a long time, not as a cash crop. They grow tree cotton, Amazonian tree cotton, and they grow that, harvest it, And you'll wake up in the middle of the night, about 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and you'll hear the women beating the cotton buds. I don't know if it probably takes seeds out or something. And then also at dusk and dawn, you'll see them starting to spin the cotton. And then they set up looms, just straightforward loom against a post, they stretch out. And they may or may not dye some of the cottons with natural dyes from the forest. And they weave these amazingly beautiful robes for the men and bags. All the men carry a man bag. No, they carry a shoulder bag. They can get everything that they need in them for their treks off into the forest. And usually they wear them over here, but if they're going through really difficult terrain, they kind of put them around your shoulders and just off the back of the head so that they don't kind of get in the way or caught in the trees or anything. Okay, so I really, really love being with them. I thought they were phenomenal before I even had a brew with them, and then you go into this otherworldly space with the ayahuasca, and yeah, I've done, you do things here. I've done LSD and mushrooms and things here, but ayahuasca was very, very different. Lots of visions of the jungle. And the visions of the jungle are I'm still deeply interested in this stuff, and I'm still learning a lot about their kind of where their consciousness is. I think David before was probably talking about consciousness, but the longer I go, the more different I realise they are. Whereas you probably expect it to be the other way around, that you get used to them and you go, oh yeah, well, a bit like us really, but their consciousness is so incredibly different. Somebody did, I think it was probably an anthropologist, did some investigation into the Ashaninka back in the 50s and studied their cosmology, and supposedly it had something like 78 levels, their cosmology. And I don't know if people here have much sort of ayahuasca experience, but certainly when I started, it was very evident that there were levels of kind of experience in the space, because you have to go through all your fears and all your insecurities, and all of these things have to be confronted, and it's only when you get through those that it seems to allow you to go up to another level of awareness. Well, supposedly you have about 78, which is quite a cosmos. When I went back in the 80s, they tend not to give you an adult to look after you in the jungle because, why should they be bothered really? So they give you younger people. So my guide was sort of 12 years old back in the 80s. And I felt about 2 next to him. And I'm fit and I'm healthy and I climb trees. Well, I just felt like useless, And I know, it's their environment, but they are so honed physically, and their knowledge, their capacity is just mind-blowing, really. And I'm aghast at it. It's just phenomenal and very beautiful. The problem is, I think that it's going to go because the rainforest is being degraded first in many places and being clear-felled in many other places. If anyone was here for Nicola yesterday, she showed some pictures from Ecuador, I think, of them just great clear swathes of jungle being cut down to grow stuff like oil palm. Where I go, it's not quite like that. It's too mountainous. So when they have had the mahogany removed near the river, but it was individual trees which they then cut up in situ and then carried out the planks to the river, and then they float them down the river, and then they put them on a boat on the main river, and then they go down further on down the river. It's actually worth more than its weight in gold, I think, the best mahogany, and they sold the rights. The Ashaninka sold, I don't know, were swindled, if you like, out of their mahogany for 2,000 sheets of roof metal, sort of corrugated irony stuff, with $10,000 maybe. Well, a quarter of a tree or less would be worth that. We do now, a friend of mine's worked really hard to get in place a deal with somebody called Cooler, who I think are using carbon credits If I get onto carbon credits, that's something else. It's funny money to go with, I think, a fake carbon dioxide thing as well. But that's a whole other issue. Anyway, there is some of that money is going to some organisation called Cool Earth, who have agreed to actually pay an equivalent amount to the communities where we go to what they've been offered for the next set of trees to go. So at the moment the trees are protected. Essentially, when we talk to the Ashaninka, we'd say, well, you shouldn't cut your trees down. And they'd say, well, yeah, I know, but we want some money. Why don't you pay us to keep them standing? Which is absolutely right. That's what we should do. If they want to be brought into the money economy and we want to retain an environment, then we should pay them to keep the environment. They are the guardians. They've done it for thousands of years. But it doesn't work like that, sadly. And all people also, so it's always sustainable timber. And you can buy the stamps in Brazil for the export of that for peanuts. It's most of the timber coming out of Brazil, Peru is illegally logged. Basically we shouldn't buy it. It's the power of the money in our pocket is the only thing. People get it for things like conservatories and door frames and stuff like that, and garden furniture. It's like, but it's come from the jungle. It's so rich. It's got so many. But people are not connected, so they don't know. And our society pays lip service to trying to connect to environment and understanding of it, but it doesn't really do a very good job. It's all like, give to this organisation and they'll sort it out for you. In my experience, they don't.
So what do we do?
Get in the jungle.
Well, that's difficult too, because there's only room for so many people. I think that the power of money in your pocket is the most powerful thing you've got. And in terms of what you buy and don't buy. Yeah, I know it's dirty paper and all that, but if you don't buy tropical timber, then at least you're not responsible, are you?
Where does it end up, the tropical timber, like in the products?
A lot of it goes to rich people's homes in Brazil, and then a lot of it comes back to Europe, but especially North America and Japan, I think. Japan, they like their tropical timber. Decimated most of Southeast Asia already. The Japanese are funny, aren't they? Because they're Shintoists, so their forests are holy, so they don't cut them down. But they've been off to like the Philippines and pretty clear felled that. Yeah, they could well. So, yeah. All right, yeah, back to Ashaninka. Not only did they fight a war for 15 years, but when I was going in the 80s, it wasn't senderos that were the most worrying thing. It was the coca growers, or not particularly the coca growers themselves, but the ones who ran the little factories in the jungle. I expect most of you know, but first stage processing the coca leaf. Coca leaf, by the way, is hugely nutritious. I think it was a guy called Tim Plowman did a study of it. It's really high in calcium and all sorts of other minerals. And we tend to be told, the people of the mountains of Peru chew coca and it's traditional. It wasn't actually traditional before the Spanish went. It was reserved really only for ceremonies and for the royal Incas. It was the Spanish who got hold of the coca leaf and found that to give it to their mine workers, they could work longer hours, less food, stay away. So basically it was used as an aid to enslavement of the mostly mountain people. Mountain people and the jungle people are very, very different. They're very lovely as well, though. I talk about the colonists going into the jungle where they're out of place, but they're lovely people too, but they don't have the same degree of cultural continuity that the tribes of people in the Amazon have. Yeah, when I was going up the river in the 80s, I can remember going up in 83. It was actually when I took my 3-month-old daughter in. And we were going up the main river, and yeah, the people on the boat were colonists, and they lost an outboard motor in the river, so it was ridiculous. So we ended up on the bank of the river in really hot weather, opposite a settlement, which was a coca settlement, and there was a big unmarked plane coming in there every 20 minutes. So they were flying out past Tabasco to Colombia, basically, for processing. I think increasingly processing goes on in Peru, which I'm a bit concerned about, because though the Americans have been active there and have sprayed in some valleys and things, it's not the same situation as Colombia, where it's been war for sort of 40 years really. So yeah, going up the river then, it was a bit scary, but you sort of dealt with it. But the last time I went in the 80s and 86, there was a police post downriver, which they put there because of the rising of Sendero. I think 24 police have been massacred there. 2 weeks before I went in, I didn't even know about it. But there's a long story to that, but it was really dangerous at that time. When I came back out that time, it was really dangerous. The Senderos, when they actually attacked the Ashaninka for the first time, the Ashaninka just disappeared into the jungles, so they thought, oh yeah, you know, they've gone off, they're scared of us, but they went off and essentially they fought a guerrilla war against the guerrilla army of Senderos Luminosos, and won. The government wouldn't arm them though.
Why was Senderos, did they want their territory?
Yeah, they wanted their territory because there was an area of caves that they felt that, caves again, felt there was an area of territory where they would be secure. It's happened before in Peru that revolutionary groups have used the jungle as a basis because access is difficult. You know, there's not great police presence, not a large population. So, it's like that really. Okay, let's try and bring it up to date a bit more. I haven't really talked about shamanism as such. I'll talk a little bit about that. Obviously, I've been doing ayahuasca since 1982, which is a long time, and when I first came back from Peru, nobody kind of heard of it or knew what it was. They all thought, you know, you're a bit nuts because you've been taking this weird brew in the jungle. Then from around 2000 or so, it gradually became a bit more popular. I don't know whether due to publicity in the 90s by Terence McKenna or whatever, but it certainly became more well known and started to be used in this country. And I think, I mean, I already was, but I was doing it with friends, and we would buy the raw materials and we'd brew it ourselves. And that's something I'd recommend to anyone here who really wants to do it, is you know, try and do it with somebody who's done it before, but make it yourself. Santo Daime kind of brought it in here. Santo Daime are syncretic, you know, mix of religion. It originated with a rubber tapper in Brazil, I think, and it's kind of synthesis of ayahuasca use and Christianity. I find it a bit weird because they have large groups of people, they all dress in white, the men are separated from the women, they sing, not really Icaros, they're kind of Christian songs in Portuguese. And I wonder how accessible that is for people. But it is being put out there as something wonderful to experience and as a sort of psychotherapy. But personally, I've never been to a Santo Daime ceremony, though I've been invited to help administer them. I just haven't bothered really. It seems a bit weird to me. There's also a proliferation now of other people doing ayahuasca in quite large groups, but lots of money. I worry about the degree of like aftercare. It is being used as a, well, it's a nice trendy way to make money. I'm very, very skeptical of that. For me, well, I mean, if you have a strong ayahuasca brew, I'd find it hard to hold the energy for more than 5 people, really. It's hard work. So, more than that, then you certainly need several people, really, to be looking after the situation. Yeah, I would encourage people to make it themselves. You can buy the vine, you can get it on the internet. I use Mea Ethnobotanicals. It's Maurice in Holland. He's very, very good quality, fair price. In fact, he's cheaper than a lot of wholesalers. So, and it's always really good quality. I've met him, he's an okay dude. The other thing about ayahuasca, traditionally it's made with chacruna. Well, first off, the chacruna doesn't travel too well. These are the leaves, the DMT leaves. and it loses its potency quite quickly. The vine doesn't. You keep the vine for years and it keeps its potency, but the leaves tend to lose their potency, which I think is why many of these larger organisations import their brews. They get it sent over. Again, I find that a bit weird. I think if you make the brew and if you've got people who are going to do it with you, then you can make it with them. Their energy feeds in. As long as they've not got weird energy, you let them feed it in. You can maybe build a bender, collect firewood. And I'm meaning out in the sticks, you know, in the woods, or by a river somewhere, away from houses, away from light. Do it at night. In the jungle they always do it at night. I personally do the same thing here. And I don't use the chicruna. And I don't use Mimosa hostilis root bark, which is another option, because it's all a bit like trading from somewhere else in the world. So I do use the vine, but I mix it with the mushroom. Our mushrooms, they grow here. They're our sacrament. Their energy is from here.
It's our shamanic drug, isn't it?
Yeah, it's our sacrament. It's our shamanic drug. Yeah, it's psilocybin. Psilocybe simulatiata, liberty gaps are the most widespread ones. I expect most of you know about them. So I use it with those, which means you've got the kind of all that wisdom, knowledge, experience, tradition from the Amazon in the vine, and then you've got the energy that's in the mushroom that comes from here. So we've got something of our land, because ultimately shamanism is about, I think, land and place. Rather than, I don't know what it is moving into really at the moment. For me, it's integrated me with plants and environment in a very, very strong way. And though I understand that some people benefit in the cities probably from experiencing it, I think they could learn so much more by doing it in a more natural setting, because most of the problems of our sort of society at the moment seem to be a complete disengagement from nature. I'm not saying we'd all go back and live in the countryside, it's impossible, but it would be good to get people back to recognising their origins, that their food comes from the ground and from growing with sunlight, and it doesn't kind of grow on a Tesco counter. Sorry.
Do you know of a wild British plant with the MAOI?
Yeah, the way the ayahuasca vine works is it's an MAO inhibitor, a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, which basically means it stops the production in your stomach of the stuff that defends you against amines, which are quite abundant in our diets and stuff. So you're opening your body up. Natural MAO inhibitors in our environment, I'm not aware of any wild ones. I'm aware that passion flower is to a certain degree, passion flower leaves. Parsley supposedly is as well, strangely. But whether they would operate in sufficient quantity to activate, say, the chicruna, I mean, some would argue, well, mushrooms are active anyway, why do you need an MAO inhibitor? There is, for me, there's certainly a synergy between the mushroom and the ayahuasca vine, which makes, 100 mushrooms with 2 ounces of ayahuasca very, very different to 100 mushrooms. Very, very different. Probably considerably more intense. And also, it's not for everyone. It's really trendy at the moment. Ayahuasca, I'm doing an ayahuasca ceremony, and they go off. And also, there's a lot of doing it over long periods of time. Oh, we're going for 3 days. I don't know. I'm a bit unsure of that. If it's a good brew and you make your brew well, you don't need to do 3 in a row. You do 1. I think you need the other 3 days to recover. But that's just my personal opinion. I'm not saying what anybody should or shouldn't do. I'm just saying really what I've learned from my own experiences. It's up to you guys what you do. So that's all of that. And how much time do we have? Because I haven't got a watch on. I never wear a watch. Sorry?
Are you going till 2?
Yeah.
You've got 5 minutes.
Oh, right,
You
okay.
timed that very well to ask that question.
I'll say one quick thing and then any questions that you want to ask. Okay, what am I doing about this situation? I've looked at it and I think that faster than money, schools will destroy their culture. They're teaching the children stuff that is in direct contradiction to their traditional belief systems, their spiritual belief systems and practices. Not finished yet, yeah? Oh, yeah, you can bring me a fresh one. Thank you very much. Right,
Good time.
Yes, one of my beautiful daughters. She came in with me 3 years ago with my other two daughters, and because I've been going in for 30 years, well, 27 years then, they asked me where I wanted to go. Oh, you want to go to Parry Harrow? That's a 1,000-foot waterfall. And I said, well, we'd like to go up the Mamiri perhaps first. And, up Mamiri. And I said, there's waterfalls up there, aren't there? Yeah. But he looked a bit perplexed, but yeah, okay. So there was a guide there next morning for us, so we set out. We went for 4 hours, but we're good walking in the jungle. Most people would take 8 or 10 or 2 days, but we're pretty good at it. But I was amazed. We were taken to a place where nobody had ever been before. No loggers, no missionaries, no coqueros, no soderos. So essentially, not uncontacted, because they trade. I'm not sure that there's any uncontacted people in the Amazon, but there are people who choose not to be in contact. So they're kind of semi-contacted because they trade. But we went up there and we actually had a brew with them on the first night. And it was, I can't describe it, but we stayed there 3 days. When I left, tears just flowed down my face. And I don't cry very often, but I just... I'm going back in 10 days, going out to Peru. I was a teacher for much of my life, and I actually taught at top public school in Peru, so I've kind of got a credibility basis in the formal world, which I don't give any strength to at all, really, personally, but it will help establish the fact that I can go in. I want to interact with the Ashaninka to find out what they want from their schools, and then look at the curriculum and how it's been taught, and then talk to the teachers, many of whom are Ayahuasca, are Ashaninka, or a bit more acculturated. I want to talk to them and try to get the stuff that they need for their own interaction with the outside world without losing what they have. Let that go out to them. But the other stuff that is totally disrupting their thought systems and spiritual belief systems and medicinal patterns, that stuff shouldn't be going in. So I want to try and work with the teachers, see if we can just twist that all around a bit to make it more applicable to Ashaninka, or just chuck it out altogether, and try and keep the Peruvian authorities at bay on that. I don't know how you feel about it. I was a teacher for a long time. I just think it's brainwashing and indoctrination, and all the emphasis are wrong, and that's in our society. It's all right up to the end of primary, but after that it goes a bit nuts. It's very hard to speak about. All right, that was very brief at the end because I know there's no time left. But any questions?
Can I just make a comment for anyone who's sort of thinking about following your suggestion and brewing for themselves? There's a really wonderful place on the internet called the Ayahuasca Forum. It's a beautiful place, lots of beautiful people hang out there, really healing experience just to be part of that forum, and I highly recommend joining up if you're thinking of brewing for yourself, because you get a lot of support that way, and advice, and just general good vibes.
Yeah, thanks for that. I was just going to say one thing, partly in response to your question. A lot of people here use Syrian rue seed as an MAO inhibitor. It's qualitatively very different to ayahuasca. I think it's a more potent MAO inhibitor. It's quite freaky. That's a harder trip again, I think, Syrian rue mushrooms. But there's one warning for that. Again, a little knowledge can be a bad thing. Syrian rue is a massive uterotonic, so you don't want a woman taking it who's maybe in early stage pregnancy, whereas with ayahuasca it's not a problem at all. So some of the analogues are a bit, you've got to be careful with it.
Is it the ayahuasca vine itself that causes the nausea and the vomiting? And is there any way to sort of...
Thank you.
Is there any way to reduce that?
Yeah, well, the vomiting's an interesting one. I mean, the Ashaninka call ayahuasca kamarampi, and that actually is their kind of verb for vomit. So ayahuasca's called vomit, It probably wouldn't be so popular here if it's called, sick or vomit. They tend there to give you, when they give it to you, they give you a gourd full. And just the quantity of that makes it very hard for me personally to keep down. And the longer I drink it, the harder I find it to drink, actually. And also the less amount seems to be needed. It does seem to sort of flush out your neural pathways, so that the more you take it, in a funny way, unlike most other drugs, I think the less you need. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah. So that I think they like you to vomit because it's cleanse. If you're really clean, you probably wouldn't vomit anyway. So I'm thinking purity of diet, but probably purity of spiritual thought and all that as well. It can flush you out both ends, and the vomiting, for some people don't like to vomit. I personally don't like to vomit, but I accept it in the jungle. And you just walk off into the jungle and you sort of park a tiger, as the Australians tend to say, and go back and lie down, and carry on singing with them. When I brew here, I tend to brew it to a very, very small quantity, and so that it, a teaspoon is all you need. That way I don't get any stomach problems at all. The other thing, of course, is to fast. I personally fast before. I used to fast for 3 days before doing a brew. I tend now to have breakfast and then just fast during the day. But I think the longer that you do fast, it's kind of the more respect you're showing it and the more energy it will give back to you in the experience.
Totally separate question, but shaman, the word, came up at Small World. Long conversations about what a shaman is. But I would just start to ask you.
Yeah, okay. Shaman the word stems from Mongolia originally. I mean, I think the word's bandied around a lot these days. I don't personally choose to call myself a shaman, but then other people have said, well, that's not taking responsibility. And I think, well, I do take responsibility. And they say, well, you are a shaman.
Yeah.
But I kind of don't like words so much. What I would say is that anybody can trip off their face. It's not difficult to do. Anyone can do that.
But I would say if other people call you a shaman, you probably are. If you're calling yourself a shaman, you're probably not.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's a nice way to look at it. Yeah, okay. One thing I would say about it, like, you can get off your face with loads of drugs and loads of psychedelics. The work, as far as I can tell, is what you learn in that other space about your own personal development and about situations in the world or your relationship to the world or other people. You are given in that space really quite privileged information, I think. It's like having a dialogue with God for 3 hours sometimes. It's quite phenomenal. Or it can be with a wild animal. I've had instances of three hours or so just with wolves. What seems important to me is to try to bring back as much of that teaching from the other space, if you like, that you can. And then the true work is to disseminate the learning of that out to people. Otherwise, not doing anything, are you? So it does seem as though if you are learning in that space, the responsibility shamanically would be to try to introduce that learning and understanding, that perhaps higher level of understanding, don't like hierarchies, so other level of understanding, out into the world. Does that kind of answer that?
Yeah, it was a similar answer that someone at Small World gave me, who I also considered a shaman.
Oh, okay. Who was it?
It was Dave Pepper, who does We Shaman, We Showman.
Okay, I don't know.
That tracks.
All right.
And I asked him, but I disputed the teaching bit, because the teaching bit is the guru job, and you can be a shaman without teaching.
Yeah,
but also you can be
teaching may be the wrong word. Disseminating information.
A guru disseminating information might not have had the experience.
Yeah, all right. A guru just means teacher anyway.
No, but a guru might have learned the information from a book. But a shaman's got to have
gone. Yeah, I like this comment.
Has to have gone to the place.
Yeah, I like this comment about books. I probably got to wind up, but the beauty of being with the Ashaninka is that like 99.9% of what they learn and understand, certainly before schools came in, is experiential and shared with the rest of the community. If we really truly examine our knowledge and understanding of the world, it's like 99% comes from books, teachers, second-hand information, telly, films, computers, etc., etc., and we're sort of 1% experience. And you can actually, you know, trying to teach in our schools here was a nightmare, because I'd say, well, the book's wrong, it's not like that. I've experienced this and it's not like that. Oh, that's just anecdotal.
Yeah.
But it was real. I saw it. You know, I smelt it. I felt it. And you read a book, and that's true. We have a real fixation with written text. And last time I spoke, all this came up about the kind of magic inherent in the written language and the way that that's used often to manipulate us. But that's a whole other. That'd be another hour or whatever.
Next time, that'd be a good one.
Yeah, next time. Right. Any other questions? I think I've probably got to finish the work. Okay.
Dangerous thing, the written word, isn't it?
Yeah, I think.
Much better when we speak with each other than listen to words on a page.
Yeah. Well, I've read accounts of the subjugation of indigenous peoples around the world. Now, often the indigenous people say that the reason that the other side won was not the weapons, was not the strength of the warriors or any of those things. It was the communication of the written language, and that was like a magic that they couldn't emulate because it gave the people opposing them such a massive advantage. So, yeah. All right. I think if anyone wants to come and chat after, great. You know, or any other questions. There's so many avenues that you can go down with all this stuff. So please do come out. I do have some pictures on the computer in the car that I can bring over and show people. It's an incredible environment to look at there. I do take small groups in sometimes if people are reasonably fit and healthy and of moderately sound mind. Subjectively speaking, yes. All right, that's lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike Shaman.
Debt Free TV, in association with GetOutOfDebtFree.org.